Hey, welcome back to another episode of Sailor's Guide to Self-Reliance. We're going to talk more about the square knot. Now, whenever there's a knot that there's variations of, I'll really focus on how to do it. So let's get back to basics here. Square knot. Bring it in close. Alright, we've got our working end and our dead end, okay? Right over left, pull it through. Left over right, pull it through. Now see how that just looks right? Square knot. Excuse me. Sailors on ships would call it a square knot because that's what they would use to square away a bundle of rope. So it would be hanging with a lark's head, or a lark's head or a clove hitch. We talked about the clove hitch. But they would use that little knot to make the bundle tight so it would look nice and squared away. Square knot. It's also called a reef knot because when you're sailing actual, with a sail, when you have to unsheet your sail and pull down line, you've got an excess bundle of line that can be on your deck or your trampoline, and so you need to keep that from getting in the reef. So it's also been called a reef knot. We'll just refer to it as a square knot. Okay, so. Square knot looks like that. If you do it wrong, you'll know it instantly because it just won't look right. And they call that a granny knot, which is kind of offensive because grannies back then they were sewing and knitting and creating things and custom fabricating clothes out of burlap sacks and probably knew a lot more about the guy who coined that phrase. So I'm not offended, but somebody might be. I don't know. But yeah, there's your granny knot. You can tell it's just not right. So, back to basics. What we have is a square knot with a slip loop. Okay, that's what we're going to be tying today. So, you just tie your regular square knot. Okay, and then you take your working end and you bring it back through the line of the bitter end. Okay. The dead end. That's my yellow line is the dead end. And see how it captures it, captivates it? Then you make it tight. Now, it's still a square knot, and it still retains a high level of tensile strength, but it's got a quick release. And if you're on the ranch and dealing with horses and dealing with loads and dealing with, emergency situations where you could potentially hurt something or someone if you don't have that, we use this a lot out here. So, again, we've got our working end or bitter end and our dead end. Right over left, left over right. Pull it through. Okay. Now I'm going to take the working end and pass it under the dead end. Make it tight. And it looks just like square knot. Alright, one more thing before we go. When we're dealing, you'll hear me talk a lot about tensile strength, and I do that because it's important. The line gets its tensile strength from the inside cord. This is 550 cord. It's a mil spec. We use it in parachutes. I know that sounds fancy, but it's really not. We'll talk about working strength, tensile strength, braking strength. All those numbers are different. But this is supposed to snap at 550 pounds. That means if I hang 550 pounds from it, it'll snap. Not necessarily true. But we'll talk more about that later. Interesting stuff. There's actually a lot of things you can do with the core of a rope. We'll also talk about that later. That's all the time I got for today, guys. Got to get back to it. Thanks for your time. Hope you have a good evening. Stay salty.